My guest in this episode is New York-based Kane Dowsett, who has been the head of brand communications and marketing Americas for Clifford Chance since the beginning of 2020. Prior to this, he was with Clifford Chance in Hong Kong for 4.5 years, having moved there from Melbourne, where he was the communications manager for a national law firm, Maddocks. Before working in law, he had a successful career with the global engineering firm GHD, which he joined whilst working in the Middle East. This impressive international career started in event management and sports marketing for major brands such as Formula One Grand Prix and Australian Open. He is a passionate advocate for LGBTIQ equality and has created many innovative events to support pride in the legal profession and beyond. When I first interviewed him for the Maddocks job in 2013, my notes described him as energetic and creative, and I wrote, "He will go far." How much further will he go? Let's dive in and find out. Welcome to the podcast, Kane.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you so much. I'm almost tearing up. That's a nice summary.
Now, we're obviously going to dive in deep later to discuss the sort of many journeys your career and indeed you have had. But let's start at the very beginning. You studied an advanced diploma in sports recreation management. What did you want to be?
To be very honest with you, I'll be very frank. As you know, I wanted to be a tennis player growing up, a professional tennis player. Okay. I was never as good as I should have been for how much I trained and played and practiced and all of those things.
Mm-hmm. So what was your first real job then?
My first real job, that is a great question. That's open to interpretation, that question. So I worked in my parents' pet supplies business growing up.
Yes.
I worked in a couple of sports stores, so fitting and selling shoes to people and sports clothes and that sort of thing. Loved the discounts there. Mm-hmm. My first real job coming out of university, I worked for an events company called Camp Australia.
Mm. Now, you were in Melbourne at this time, and it says on your CV that during your job doing these events, you went to the Middle East. Talk to us about how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I grew up south of Melbourne, down on the Mornington Peninsula. And when I sort of made the foray into events work, obviously events are all over. And following my time at Camp Australia, I actually joined a company called Clean Event. They have been since acquired by Spotless, I believe, and they did event management and venue management for major events. And that's what took me over to the Middle East. So I'd been with them for, I believe, about a year or so, and working in major events in Australia, including for the Formula One Grand Prix, the Spring Racing Carnival with the VRC, and even, the ECA, the Brisbane show, if you've heard of it. So it was by no means sort of glamorous. And I remember one day walking into my office, and our COO at the time yelled out from his office, "Do you speak Arabic?" And I said to him, "I'm sorry, excuse me?" He's like, "Do you speak Arabic?" I said, I don't. No, I'm sorry. Why do you ask me that? And he said, well, because we've just won a contract for the Doha Asian Games and we need to mobilize a team over there immediately. And I would like you to go. Mm-hmm. And that is, I guess the rest is history, as they say. So about a month or so after, I terminated my lease and moved over for what was to be a 14-month contract. Mm-hmm. And the kind of transient nature of that company, so they assemble events teams that travel around the world basically and follow different events around the world. And after the Asian Games, they'd won the contract for the World Cup cricket in the West Indies. Mm-hmm. So I almost took that approach. Now, personally at that time, my partner moved over to the Middle East with me, and the firm was really supportive of that, which was incredible. If you think back, that was 2004. So, very different time to what we live in now. And they moved us over there together, and we liked it so much, believe it or not, living in the desert in Doha, that we decided, no, you know what, we're going to give it a shot. So we both pursued opportunities with local companies, local events companies.
Right. And during that time, you did various things. So you did some public relations, you did events, as you described, some luxury brand marketing, all sounds very glamorous. And then you joined the engineering firm GHD. I mean, was it the glamour of that sector perhaps that interested you, Kane?
I mean, obviously, I sense the sarcasm there, Graham, but to be honest with you, think of that time. So we're talking about 2005 to 2010. That was the height of the construction boom in the Middle East. So things like the Burj, the Palm, the World Islands, and they were all being developed. So there was a lot of activity there. Now, yeah, that very luxurious element of what we did. So my partner and I actually started up a PR firm, and we were basically a way for us to get free holidays. So we did contra-deal PR work for brands like the Six Senses and the hotels and resorts. And that was a really great opportunity. And over that time, while I was working in Doha, I was working for a local events company, more in the conferences space. And of course, I gravitated back to sports and recreation. I conceptualized a health exhibition, and we had the local hospitals sponsor it, and sporting supplies and those sorts of things. So I was really finding my groove and blending in those elements of event management. And you know me personally, I'm forensic about details, and that's really useful when you're in events. And then from there, we were living our lives, and I started playing tennis again. And I was playing tennis just regularly through the expat community. Now, I'd been in events logistics and management and those sorts of things. And when you get into that type of role, it's kind of a hold all. So I would end up, if there were a crisis situation on site, or if there was a need to go aggressively recruit employees or design the uniforms for, the court cleaners at the tennis, or that sort of thing, you fall into that. And I was articulating that to David, and he's like, yeah, come in. And I thought, sure enough, I'll do so. And I went into the office, and it was the office of GHD. And very quickly, I understood that David was the Middle East director for the firm. He'd been with the firm for 30 years. And you would never know it, right? Just your usual Aussie guy. We played tennis, didn't really do much other than that. And again, as I say, the rest is history. I sat down and I had a job offer within the next couple of days, I think it was. And that really opened the door for me to, I guess it's a more polished version of what I was doing previously, because you work in a corporate.
Did you think when you joined GHD that you would be there for 6 years?
Well, at that age, probably not. I mean, my history, as I said, I was with Camp Australia for a number of years. Now, this is where I aged myself. I think it was 4 years or so. I was with Clean Event for a sort of an equivalent time. And joining GHD, I saw it as a means to stay with permanency. Another topic I'm sure we could talk about, but, a lot of people in events and in these types of roles move around and do contracts. And I've always really found the appeal of security very important to me. I was lucky enough to spend the time there over that period, but then an opportunity came up for me to move into a global role. So I actually did my following 3 years back in Australia in a global role. And so for me, I look at them as little sort of individual jobs, but the tenure at the firm, absolutely not. Would I want, as an events professional, as I marketed myself, would I want to be in an engineering firm for 6 years? Probably not, but they really did work with some really cool things and projects, and also wonderful people. Absolutely love it. I'm in very close contact with the team at GHD still. That they are going gangbusters.
I'm taking our first deep dive here to reflect on several things. Firstly, it's nice how tennis, whilst not his ultimate career, did actually play a major part in his career. And one shouldn't underestimate how important hobbies and sporting activities can be in forging relationships that can positively affect your working life. Secondly, we've heard often in this series that being overseas offers opportunities that you might not consider on home turf. There's something quite freeing about living in another country and having to consider alternative ways of earning money, which can, like in Kane's case, lead to a highly successful career. Back to the interview. So when you got back to Australia, you did 3 years with them, you were promoted into a global role, and then you decided to join a national law firm. What did you see that move offering you at that time?
It's a great question. I think on that point of tenure, when I was at GHD, I felt like the role itself was no longer providing me with an opportunities or challenge. I was really, truly embedded and settled, and we were doing great things, and I was working with great people. But I remember, and you'll remember this certainly, when we met, I remember just thinking to myself, like, I want to do more. And I want to be able to do more, and I want to be stretched. And I don't want the challenges of my job to be purely resourcing and time in the day and volume of work. I want to be challenged and stretched. Mm-hmm. And that was an important thing. And I remember you said to me, Graham, and we spoke very frankly, and you know, what's an all description of the legal industry? It's very demanding. You said to me, let's the elephant in the room. Obviously, the legal profession will pay more highly than engineering, just on as a generalization. So tick, there's an appeal. It's generally a little fancier in terms of workspace and the perks and the benefits. Okay, check, tick. Extremely demanding internal clients, and you have to be, that attention to detail is absolutely critical, because lawyers are technically, they're trained to pick fault in things and to debate. And that is the difference between engineering and law. And therein lie the challenge. And I was on board, as you know. And again, I'll say it again, the rest is history.
The rest is history, because after that, you went to Hong Kong with one of the biggest law firms in the world, where you now are, Clifford Chance. And we know that was not the first time working and living overseas. But can you remember at the time, did you see that as a stint, or did you know that you were going to continue to travel around the world?
I think intuitively, I probably did know that joining a global firm would provide opportunity. And I think that is one of the things. And I will say as well, as a kind of point of juncture, there's no shame in not wanting to travel and not wanting to grow. And if you find your niche and you're good at it and you love who you work with in the work that you do, go for it. Mm-hmm. For me, it was a constant sort of thinking about what's next, while still kind of being present. And I think the discussions that we had, and we'll get a little deep here, and, I had so my ex that I had spoken of previously, that relationship sort of fizzled out. So I had an opportunity where I wasn't tethered or tied to a location. And that was an important thing, because I truly believe, and you said this to me, Graham, if you're going to take on this role, it's huge. It's a great firm. There's a lot of opportunity, but you're going to have to work. When I went to London to induction, within a couple of weeks of getting to Clifford Chance in Hong Kong, and I turned up at Canary Wharf, and I was like, "Where's the Clifford Chance building?" And where are the floors for Clifford Chance? I was like, "No, it's the whole building. There's 3,000 people here." Yeah. That is when you kind of understand, okay, I'm part of something pretty big.
Yeah. And I want to ask you a question about when you worked for GHD, it was a global firm, and you were in brand communications, and now you're at Clifford Chance, and you started in Hong Kong, and now you're in New York. What is the difference marketing the same brand in different locations? I mean, is there a difference? What are the nuances that you can tell us about?
I discuss this with my peers, because we are a global team, but I discuss it with them regularly. And it's often, not the most pleasant conversations, because what we're doing is negotiating campaign terms. And what it boils down to be very frank, when you're in marketing, so first and foremost, we'll get this, my view is polarizing. Internal communication, external communication, campaign work, digital, PR, all of the aspects of external communications and internal, it's all the same thing. So it's all marketing. So it's about understanding and segmenting your audience, and then delivering your message through the right channels, right? And the difference between Asia Pacific and working for the firm in London or in the US is the baseline is brand awareness, and how receptive your audience is, and how much knowledge they have of who you are and what you do. And that's a big thing. So if I look at my remit with the firm across Asia Pacific, there was 8 offices or 10 offices at the time. We downsized a little. The brand for Clifford Chance in Hong Kong, they are the number one, first to mind when people talk about international law firms. Go to Perth, we have 12 attorneys, let's just say we did in 2015, very different perspective. And in terms of media and promoting the brand, there is an element of actually getting on people's radar in order to, push them through the sales pipe or the recruitment pipe or whatever your objective is. And that's something that you can almost take for granted. So as I said, being in Hong Kong for more than 40 years, there was less work to do in terms of that groundwork on brand recognition. And the reason I mention this is because it all stems back to your people. So our attorneys in Hong Kong, far more adept at speaking about the firm and talking about the global network as they would be when compared to those in Australia, because the Australian presence was the result of a merger, and it was almost like we need to go back to basics and understand who we are and where does that connect with the global brand as well. And then I move, and very different situation now in Australia. They are doing so well, and they are, it's a new generation there, which is really quite exceptional to see. But then you move over to the Americas, which I've moved here, and I've come out of 4.5 years of, okay, we're at the top of the market. This is great. We have the malleability to be creative and try different things to, oh yeah, we're one of a couple of hundred firms, and we're maybe the 170th largest in New York, the largest legal market in the world. And it's a very different proposition. So it goes back to your people and being able to train your people and have them understand what it is they are, what's their purpose, what do they want to be known for, and also, pushing and shoving a little bit to make sure that what they are doing and saying reflects what the brand values and promotes globally.
That was a great answer, and a good reminder to anyone working on brand communications with a business that has different markets and or different locations. I like it when he brings it back to people, and particularly in helping them to understand their purpose and the overall strategic positioning of the brand. Marketing can often be viewed as the poor relation to business development in the legal profession. I mean, how have you elevated the role that you play to demonstrate return on investment?
I think it comes down to a very simple equation, and that is measurement. We are so lucky now, if I think back and, we've done a little trip down memory lane, the digitization of marketing and the access to analytics is unbelievable compared to when I first entered the industry. And that can be a double-edged sword because you're more accountable for what you do. And as marketers, we always struggle to get those tangible results. So how many marketers can tell you, well, we won a mandate for $500,000 based on XYZ campaign? Generally, what we do is around profile building. And that is really hard to measure. There are brand indexes, there is research that's done, but it is all kind of subjective, and you have to be able to sell it. Like you have to be able to spin and sell your measurement and your results. And the easiest thing that I think that people either entering the profession or looking to demonstrate their value, as partners, so we'll just switch into sort of the internal clients. Our internal clients are our partners. Now, these partners, they don't know what they don't know. So to be able to come to them with the analytics, it's a really, really powerful thing. And I think that's really what's changed. The second point is really important. I've been having this discussion so frequently. Yes, we're seen as the poor cousin to BD, but there is no marketing without BD. So your business development teams, they own the client insight. They know who the clients are. They know the business plans, and they know who we want to target. Our job as marketers to be the conduit to that and to offer that guidance and advice and then the feedback. And it's also okay to fail. That's the important thing as well. So we ran concurrent campaigns recently where we're foraying into paid advertising in terms of social media. I'm not sharing any secrets of the firm. I'm just saying we've run some paid campaigns, and to be able to look at the heightened activity and engagement you can get from actually segmenting and targeting and paying for LinkedIn to do that work for you, for example, with a campaign, it's incredible. But as I said, we've just run concurrent campaigns, and the results could not be any more different for both of those. One of them is, on one side, is exceptional, and that is around a bit of thought leadership. The other one was promoting an event, and not so great in terms of the feedback. But, we are very frank, and we've worked closely with our partners to explain what we're learning from all of this. And that in itself is incredibly valuable. And your gauge for if you're making traction in that space is the demand you generate. So if I can have a partner or a legal team come to me from a practice area and say, we want to put a campaign together, can you organize a vanity URL for our campaign? That is success in itself, because that certainly is not something that attorneys learn in law school.
Now, you were very successful in Hong Kong. I remember you ran a small team there. You understood the press there. You knew Hong Kong like the back of your hand from an event perspective. So you were pretty comfortable in your skin, I think, in that job. Why move to New York? So,
Graham, the personal, the honest to God truth story about the move, I moved for love. And so I booked this trip over to New York, and I was meeting up with some friends that I knew from GHD that had moved there, which was really cool. And and I turned up and I met my partner on the second day I was in New York, actually. And we'll spare you the details. It was a friend taking my phone, and it was a Tinder swipe, and it was a meet up for a drink, etc., holiday romance. And then over the following months, I began looking at flights regularly every day. I'm thinking, when can I get back to New York? What can I do? And the benefit of working with a global firm, a lot of flexibility, and certainly didn't hurt that we had offices over here as well. So over the following years, every couple of months, I would head over and I would work from the office here and kind of work on sort of 24-hour schedule, let's just say, to accommodate for time zones. And I started seeding in the benefits of what I can provide into the US team over here. So it was no accident that I found myself starting to deliver digital profile and social media training to the attorneys when I was in town, and people liked that because it's an international guest for want of a better term. And then I just started working more closely with the comms team over here and seeing where there are opportunities to sort of cross-sell our Asia Pac services and promote the US qualified network across Asia. And then, over a couple of years, we got to a point where I was able to move. I do want to make a point that's just come to mind, and it was a bit of advice that I was given. I was looking at opportunities. I met with a number of firms over here whilst I was working and long distance relationship with my partner Michael, and it never really stuck with me. With any of the teams that I met, that it was a group that I wanted to work with and I could see a future with, because I think the firm at Clifford Chance, we really do walk the walk. If you talk about culture and collegiality, it's just a great group of people. But I wanted to make the point because I'd become increasingly frustrated that there were no opportunities coming up within the firm. And, it's a London headquartered firm traditionally. And there were global roles coming up, and there was a reluctance, I felt, to post and position those roles anywhere outside of the UK. And no offense to any UK listeners, that's not where I wanted to be. And I've seen that change as well. So that's certainly changed, in particular within our firm now. We have a huge range of people from all over the world in leadership positions, which is great. But the point that I wanted to make was I became increasingly frustrated, and to the point that one day I walked in and spoke to my boss and said, if I can't get an opportunity over in New York, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave the firm, and I don't want to. And she turned to me and she said, well, when do you want to move? And I said, well, you know what? And, throw my dummy out of the pram. And I need to have her all over there before the end of the year, or I'm going to leave. Now, in my mind, I'm like, I'm not leaving. I'm just going to keep it going, And she said to me, you've never articulated that. So the bit of advice is, when you're faced with a situation where you're feeling a little frustrated, ask yourself the very honest question, have you actually had the conversation that you think you have in your mind? Because I'd played it up, and I think, Graham, we'd spoken a number of times, and I was like, dude, you got to help me out here. Have you got any references in New York? I need help. And you had said to me, have you been clear? And it is about, people that know me would suggest I don't lack confidence, but there was something there that stopped me from sort of putting, from valuing what or thinking about what I add in terms of value to the firm, and staking my claim and saying, well, if I'm that worth it, let's look at this. And, we did a lot of work to sell in the role, and we're boosting our profile here. We're growing. It's the largest legal market in the world. It was a great fit in the end, and it worked out. Again, we'll go back to it. The rest is history. But we're only 3 years into that history.
I'm so glad Kane told us this story, because at Selden Rosser we often counsel candidates into staying with their firms. Letting your key stakeholders know what is happening in your life that might be affecting your job satisfaction or ability to do the job as well as you can allows your employer the opportunity to help. You do need to go into the conversation understanding that compromises might need to be made, or that time might need to be taken to help achieve the right outcome. But like in this case, transparency and trust can often lead to even better outcomes than you envisaged.
You're a big advocate for LGBTIQ equality in the legal profession. I remember when you were in Asia, you were at the forefront of really helping Clifford Chance promote events in that market, which was a very difficult market at the time. And now in New York, you've done similar. I see on LinkedIn you've done similar events there. Why is it so important, do you think, both for you professionally, but also in the legal profession, to be really big advocates of equality in that way?
Well, I think that, as I said, walking the walk is important, and we see the benefits of inclusion and the benefits of diversity in everything that we do. You can walk into any, let's call it a creative brainstorming session or a strategy meeting. The more diverse people around the table and diversity of thought that you can bring to those discussions, the better. So that is the first and foremost for me. And it's, there's a business imperative to be an advocate and to really, I think I used the term before that partners don't know what they don't know. Well, the same can be said, like, you can't be what you can't see. And so having those visible leaders and visible advocates is incredibly useful for people entering the firm, entering the workforce, and for people that are existing. And I think it's increasingly important professionally. So it's part and parcel of what we promote as a firm. So as a comms/marketing/brand manager, of course, it's part of our identity. So it's a really nice thing as well. It's one of the softer side of things. That's incredibly important. But for me, I have a quick story that I've reflected to a number of people. As it relates to Arcus, I came on board at the firm, and, as part of my comms manager role, I was brought into a discussion for the diversity committee in Hong Kong. And I had a partner. I walked in and the partner said to me, "Oh, can I ask you a question? We have a distribution list for Arcus, which is the LGBTQI network in the firm, and we have a distribution list for Arcus allies. Now, which one can I put you on?" And inadvertently, I felt like he was asking me if I was gay or not, but I couldn't be sure. And I, of course, played straight and said, pardon the pun, and said, put me on both. I need to be aware of what's going on. And that was my way of really not outing myself at work. Now I reflect on that. That's really sad. That was a really sad time for me. And I was 35 at the time, and, had been in a relationship publicly, etc., and lived in the Middle East, mind you, with my partner. I remember the first Pride art exhibition that I assisted with, the first year I was with the firm. The day after the event, and of course I went in there and went crazy on the event planning, and it looked incredible and it was engaging and it was a real party. the next morning, one of our junior attorneys, Chinese attorneys, came to me and said, I never knew this sort of thing existed within our firm. I just want to thank you so much. And it really, that got me. Talk about get you right in the chest. And I was like, wow, that is a way for me. I'm using my skills to benefit others. Now, I've never been the out and proud pride marcher, anything like that, but it really hit me that you don't have to be that. And for me, this is my way of contributing and giving back. We had this discussion this morning, and we were talking about how can we get the other affinity groups in the firm involved? So this is about inclusion. Why are we making this just about pride? And I thought that is the evolution of those conversations. It's just incredible. And it's incredible to be part of. So it's so important for me personally, but it's part and parcel of that, the identity of what we're trying to promote in the market.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I have in front of me your CV from 2013.
Oh, man.
Now, if you recall, I said to you at the time that it was one of the best written and presented CVs I'd ever seen. And one of the reasons for that was that you had inserted your own quotations about your experience, but also plans that you had at that time. And I thought that was really quite sort of bold and confident. Now, I'm going to read these quotes back to you. Yeah. And perhaps you can comment and tell me if they're still relevant.
Sure. Do I need a box of tissues or what's going to happen here?
So, quote number 1, I offer resilience, empathy, and flexibility to my employer and clients.
That's absolutely true. And I think these days, I don't know if that was a differentiator back then. If the last 3 years have taught us anything, you got to be flexible. You have to be empathetic. And the resiliency is, it's incredibly important. The more you go up the chain, so to speak, certainly. Very wise.
Yes, you were. I quickly embrace new technology.
That's definitely true. I mean, I guess as you get older, you kind of slow down. We're entering TikTok realm now. And, it's fascinating. As you elevate in your career, you learn that you need to assemble savvy teams below you to keep up with things. But I'm certainly, I'm an early adopter. That's for sure.
Okay. Juggling concurrent projects and delivering to deadlines energizes me.
That's true. So if you think back, so many people were back at school. I'd always on my report cards, it would be Kane is a very popular classmate, which means I was a clown and I was social, and I used to always wait till the last minute to do things. And I always find under pressure, pressure makes diamonds or whatever the term is, I would always deliver some of my best work with that time crunch. You never really get out of that habit. I would always advise people, start planning, get working early. And I have 1,000 self-help books that I have not read, which all sit on my bedside to tell me about, the benefits of just, taking little snippets of your day and dedicating them to the small tasks, and just any movement is good movement. For me, I really do love the time crunch, but as I said, you enter tumultuous times, particularly with the market the way it is, and the sheer pace of change with technology, with the media landscape, with the access to public statement for our people. So the risk and the exposure levels are so much higher. You have to just be on your game. And that pressure, I think, is a baseline now. So not to make it a little scary for people either entering the profession, but if you are wired as such that you love the pressure, what a cool time to be in the industry.
Absolutely. You said, I'm not afraid to step into the unknown.
Yeah, I guess the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? I have really done a lot of work personally to back myself and to understand that things will always work out. And whilst you can fake it till you make it, when push comes to shove. I actually read a book, speaking of self-help books, I'm reading a book at the moment called Too Perfect. I don't recall the author. And it's around perfectionism and how it can be a barrier to success. And one of the things that really stood out with me, this book I've had, mind you, for like 3 years. It was an early pandemic buy, and I'm like 10 pages into it. It said, if you're used to just like really getting bogged down and making things absolutely perfect, give yourself a week of being a B- student. So deliver everything at a B- level. And then the kicker was, if you're an A student, that's going to show through anyway. And that is a really nice way to take the pressure off yourself while still sort of sticking to your own standards. And I think, long way of saying, yeah, that's still certainly relevant. Very happy to step into the unknown.
And then you had a bullet point on the top of page 2, and it said, my next trip will be to New York.
Wow. That is, you've got me. I'm glad we're not sharing video. I'm tearing up. I think that makes complete sense then. Quite prophetic.
It was written, Kane. It was already written. Now, one of the things that we do on Deep CV Diving is that we ask each guest to give us their favorite interview question. Our previous guest was Deborah Philippin, who is the CMO for Pinsent Masons in the APAC. And her question, which I'm going to ask you, was, can you describe a recent situation where you took the initiative to accomplish a goal?
Wow, that is a wonderful one. It's a good question. I have a great answer to what my favorite question is, and it's more an anecdote. But on that question, an example of where I took the initiative to achieve a goal. There's so many. How long have you got, right?
Yeah, so just pick one recent one. Like, what about one this morning, Kane? What about one from this morning?
No, I've got one recent, and it's quite a big one. We're on a growth strategy here in the Americas, and our annual partner meeting was a month or so ago. And in the lead up to that, I'd been working with our leadership team to train them and to really be able to present like TED Talk speakers, right? Because that is the gold standard, let's say, in the market. Now, the reason I mention that is, a year ago, we recorded some content for climate change training. So in DC, I had a TB crew in doing a sort of a social media campaign, and I used the crew to record this CLE session, like this conference that we ran. Now, pretty dry topic, great speakers, it went well, and the projects group said, we want to roll out more of these. So I pitched to them. The projects group was meeting in Copenhagen in July, and I pitched to them, hey, why don't I come over with you? And we'll use the opportunity. We have 180 of our attorneys in one location. Why don't we use that as an opportunity to shoot content? And let's do your TED Talks. I'll work with the team and I will train them up virtually to be able to step up on stage. And of course, I sugarcoated and said, I can do all of this virtually if you don't have the budget to bring me over, etc. And sure enough, they're like, yeah, you need to be there. And I said to them, also, I'm going to set up a little studio in the conference facility, and we're going to use that over the 3 days to get content for the next 12 months. So what we are doing now as a firm is looking at those events as opportunities to future-proof our pipeline of content.
That's brilliant.
And it's such a valuable use of time. There's investment there, but heck, it is so much more efficient than bringing a TB crew in or manually producing content whenever you think of it. It's really, really critical, and it's been great. And one of the big things that we do as a team, specifically here in the US, is make sure we're working on material and initiatives that we can then share back up to the network, because we're all little sort of offshoots of the mothership, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So we're always we have a monthly global BCM, so brand comms marketing meeting, and we always aim to share one initiative with the global network, and that was a recent.
That's a great one. So what's your favorite interview question? And we'll ask the next guest.
Well, I always love the just tell us about yourself outside of work, because I think you absolutely need to like the people that you work with, and you don't necessarily have to love them, but there has to be a level of sort of mutual respect and interest. And you only really, as we're re-entering the world of in-person meetings, I'm really pleased to know that at Clifford Chance we're getting back to meeting in person and moving people around, because you building those personal relationships, whether it be over a workshop over a couple of days or even drinks with your adjacent team in another office or location, those personal relationships, when push comes to shove and you don't need any barriers to entry with your colleagues, and that's a really important thing. So I love that question around, what is it? Tell us about yourself, but outside of work completely.
Now I've got a question I've created especially for you.
Okay.
It's my last question. Question. If you were to plan an event to celebrate your career to date, where would it be and what would it be?
That is absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. My heart at the moment is back with my team in Hong Kong, to be honest. And that's not that I'm romanticizing or lamenting not being in Hong Kong. I learned so much from that group. And I remember when I left Hong Kong, I don't like attention. And of course, the group all got together for a goodbye and gave me a wonderful gift. And one of the partners, actually the partner that had asked me if I wanted to be on the ARCUS or the ARCUS Allies list, he stood up and said, "You really, truly do not understand the legacy that you've left." And he said, "You have taken us and pushed us and shoved us, and our new baseline is just so far forward." And that really hit home with me. And I've been thinking a lot about legacy recently. And so I think if I was to host an event to celebrate my career, it would be on the 27th floor of Jardine House, where Clifford Chance is, in their event space. Yeah, absolutely.
You romantic, honestly. Listen, if you were ever to set up a marketing agency yourself, I think you should call it Kane and Abel, because you are both.
I mean, you then should not just be in recruitment. That's exceptional.
That's your brand name. That's how I think of you, Kane and Abel. Thank you so much for being a great guest. I really look forward to the party.
I love it, Graham. And you'll get the first invite for sure. I really appreciate it. Look, I really do. I love what you do, Graham. And I always reflect on, and I'll call it a relationship, my relationship and friendship with you. You've been like the most incredible mentor to me. And that benefit of being able to shoot straight and tell me to pull my head in when necessary, it is, it's not that common. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I really, of course, you give me a shout anytime. I think we could talk for hours.
We could. Thank you so much. Have a good week. Bye.
Thank you, Dave. Take care.